Thanks.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Daniel to get started with the meeting. So, Daniel, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Our next meeting sorry, when is our next meeting?
It's on the 29th. So as soon as the meeting started, the slide quicker stuff working.
I don't know.
Timing.
We just.
Well, I can for sure tell you it's in these.
It's actually. I don't know why that's not guys.
There we go.
Sure.
Yeah, November 20th. Sorry,
Okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. No, it's only up on here. So our next meeting is November 29th. And then the following one after that is December 12th, and that'll be our final one. Does anybody have any scheduling issues? Or you can also email me if you can't make it. Just for that day.
I'll have to leave early on Tuesday.
And so is there any questions, any comments, any concerns that any of the members had from the last meeting or before we start the next one?
Kelly just stepped out, but Kelly, did you want to address the group regarding the forms that need to be filled out?
Yes. Like everybody's attending meetings for the stipend, we need everybody to fill out the W-9 and the vendor registration form, even though it says company there, the standard form that we use for vendors, but you are the vendor, so your name is fine, in that spot. Also down at the bottom of the vendor registration form, it says prepared by, that does mean sign here, that's it. So we do need that sign, and also on the W-9 signature there. And we are asking for the social security number in order to calculate. Right? Anybody need a copy? I think I've been going around the room tonight, but you guys need a copy? Okay, yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, there are two important spots to sign it, so.
Do you have an extra copy?
I do.
Both of those. Okay, so we are going to do the rapid review of the community engagement framework principles and stakeholders before we initiate it.
Yeah, so Emma's going to lead us through this this initial exercise. Before she starts, I just want to mention that this is, as Daniel said, we only have 2 meetings after this one. So this is a really great opportunity to get to some of the meat of the issues. We're going to have you in breakout groups doing some real important work this meeting. So we hope to accomplish a lot, and we'll see where we are at the end. But it's a very exciting, I think, meeting itself, because we're really getting into the crux of the matter. I also want to make sure that everyone has a chance to meet Cammy, because this is her first meeting. So Cammy, do you want to quickly introduce yourself? You push the button down here.
Folks, I'm Cammy Thompson. I'm taking the place of Matt Roberts for these last 3 meetings. I'm on his team, so I'm the Assistant Director for Neighbor Relations at the University of Oregon on the Community Relations. Thank you for welcoming me. I caught up on some of the meeting materials, so I hope I can contribute.
So just wanting to dive into what we're calling the rapid review of the community engagement framework, just focusing on the principals and stakeholders. So we met with the chair and the vice chair and wanted to have this on the agenda, because we came to you in meeting 2, where we started to talk about what are the definitions and purposes of guiding principles. We had, some brainstorming sessions of what the principles and potential values are that the CSE wanted to see, upheld. We had an action item to suggest some groupings of that and also to put down onto paper the definitions for those, just recognizing that that is really important and making sure there's clarity of understanding. We also, in meeting 3, started to do some stakeholder mapping on the board. And so what we sent out in the pre-meeting packet earlier this week was really those items that have been in discussion, just put onto paper, and we wanted to kind of continue to revisit that and continue to review that to make sure we're getting it right. So if this is gonna be a pretty quick exercise, we were hoping that if you had gone through the pre-meeting packet, you would have flagged anything that you wanted to address in terms of, did we get any definitions wrong? Was there anything missing that we had talked about previously? Anything that didn't actually capture kind of the essence of what was discussed? So we would just want to give you another opportunity to flag that. So if folks can just break out into groups of 4, spend about 15 minutes reviewing and discussing any outstanding comments. The framework is in the pre-meeting packet in case you didn't bring your own copies. We have printouts. If you turn, I think it's at the end. So if you want to discuss with your group, please write down notes again in case we don't have time to go over it, and we'll collect those at the end. But again, this is just kind of another opportunity to continue to refine that. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, yes, Linda.
I do. I maybe missed it somewhere, but when did the survey take place?
So the survey went out for 6 weeks. I can pull up the exact dates. I think we had those details in the last meeting. It was 6 weeks. Let's see. Do you want the exact dates?
Well, I was curious because I didn't find the year in
You didn't find the what?
the year that it took place.
Oh, the survey just went out. So it was 6 weeks, kind of right when the CSC kicked off.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, so we had discussed with the group basically the various mechanisms last week for how that survey was deployed. There was a mixture of hard copies that were distributed by ambassadors that wrote the system. Yeah.
I did, so maybe September or.
I'll have to look in the records to see the exact date, but I can flag that to get that back to you. Okay, any other questions? All right, so it's 5:40, so we'll come back at 5:55.
Yeah, that's fine. And for this exercise, you can just group with the people that are next to you. We're gonna have another breakout session where we'll mix you up. But for this one, just feel free to work with the group, the people sitting near you. Okay, yeah, 15 minutes.
Stay outside of. So we are.
I really love that they broke them out by, they took kind of the whiteboard and broke it out by. And it's about categories and those, that framework, so like the form style. I really appreciate it.
They're gonna stay in the same group.
I just kind of
Only the whole time.
I thought it's all done exactly. I know there was some discussion on graphics.
Oh.
clear and portray accurately. I feel like yeah, I did have a change of stakeholders. Yeah, so I had to clarify the 15 I'm familiar with them. Yeah. So that was just one that I was trying to correct. From stakeholders, I didn't have any recommendation change, like no concerns with the framework, the housing. Definition sounded yeah, but it's,
But I like it.
I really want to make sure that stakeholder. I mean, I want to make sure you got everybody. I don't know that that's important.
I mean, I think.
These for sure, right, right.
But as I read this picture.
I think so.
This part? What's this?
And my law was there.
That's, yeah, that was not clear.
Then what are
Sent me what the city clerk knows.
Right.
There's a purpose. Yes. And it's right on the phone for long term, there was like. That's because I think that.
No, not you.
Yeah, and I think that.
It's still.
I'm sure Brian, but then Swansky didn't. How did it?
So. Yeah. And I told him he would do some tattoo. Yeah. I would recommend.
What is wrong? What is
Say city players holding one shift, we can only add like five and go along. But it's not like we also.
Yes, I guess.
How we change.
I mean, I think all of our.
Sorry, I know.
Our categories is small as that. So,
Yeah.
you can do it. Let's try to get rid of this right now.
About what, you know, we were all.
Uh,
Uh-huh. Okay, that is like. What is the problem? What is it talks about how to be without knowing
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, business is
Yeah, I think they did a good job. Yeah.
Oh, so we should get some.
Yeah, I mean, these are guidelines, but like, yes,
the destination for your first. I know where. Some of
because if we want to not spend, if we want to move forward, you know. Seeing as it stands around, you know. For both sides, I think both sides.
Yeah.
Good job. It's why they more than just. Yeah.
Joshua, yeah, you are behind my laptop.
Yeah, not then. So then, okay, yeah, you didn't have here then.
Okay.
Back to the survey. The number of respondents in comparison.
Sorry, so I was that on
Most prefer social media for but then you go back.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up here. So people are ready. We're gonna start just a minute. Talk about anything that's come out of this.
Thanks, Alex. They were the people in the school were noticing that's why they were saying like
Yeah.
All right, everybody ready?
Yeah.
Team's ready? Okay, good. I see that folks over here are good.
Tuner is someone who is taking transit for multiple trips in a row, so they're going not just to work and back, but to the grocery store, maybe.
Kind of what I thought, I was like, isn't that just a commuter?
Okay, so thank you all for doing that, and we can get through, so any of the major issues that, you know, as Emma said, we'll collect the notes, so we'll get everything, but any major issues that any groups came up with, and who wants to start? Big stuff. Who can start here?
I think we had an observation more than anything. I think our observation, and they can correct me if I interpreted this incorrectly, but we're just gonna kind of apply to any organization. If we can just remove the LTD and put in a different company. And so is this intentional enough for LPD? Is this a good filter for LPD for guiding principles, or is it too broad?
So maybe making it more specific to LTD and its characteristics would be useful.
Yeah, or and really understanding the intention of how these may be applied, I think.
The intention of it. Okay, great, thank you. This group.
So one of the things we discussed when we're looking at the stakeholders is that within, all of them are important, but some of them are super stakeholders. Mm-hmm. And what we mean by that is taking the University of Oregon is a really good example. They're not just, they're listed in the academics, but they're an employer, they are sports, tourism, you name it. It is huge. Everything. Yeah. And so there are a few others we were looking at, like the hospitals. Again, could that be a super employer? Could that be, I'm not sure we want that to be a tourism site, but people go to school districts maybe, but shopping centers got left off. And we brought that, that up in that they're little cities unto themselves with different complexities. And perhaps the tribal communities being more complex and not just a couple of words on the page. We need to have that super stakeholder awareness.
Okay, so the idea of being, there should be some distinction, it can't just all be a bunch of names. You have to have some distinction between the places that you're gonna focus a little more of your energy, or that's the more critical for LTD as opposed to others.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Now, good?
Yeah, we talked about Parks and Rec, Springfield, Willamette, and Eugene Park and Rec, River Road. You know, the very destination of the swimming pools and the community centers and.
Okay. Great. Next group? What we got?
I think each of us had specific things that we'll probably want to share. I also wanted to emphasize the University of Oregon, I do think needs more than one line. In addition, housing drivers as well. There's over 4,000 people who live just in the university on campus area. And then considering all the off-campus student housing as well, that's an important driver. And then UO's specific transportation department, I'm sure they've worked plenty with LTD, but I think emphasizing that under transportation development.
Okay, since the point we're having, although it's inferred in 4.6 of the principles, I would add those likely to be impacted by a proposal. So whether they're positively or negatively, it's good to get them in the room.
Right, so distinguishing between where there's a real impact versus where they might be a little more tangential.
Right, you know, a lot of this is trying to reach everybody, but I think you do need to focus down on the people you're gonna hear from later.
No. That's interesting though, because one of the other things is, I don't know if you have this issue here, but if you neglect someone, even if they're not involved in the project, then they might say, well, why aren't we? Right, why aren't we getting our share? So but I understand what you're saying. That doesn't mean you have to engage absolutely everybody, because that'd be exhausting. Next group.
Yeah.
Remember what we were gonna say. As somebody who's coming into this a little bit cold, I thought the definitions were mostly really thoughtful. I added just a few kind of like nitpicky words here and there. So maybe that can just kind of be included in kind of the notes that I pass along. It's literally just adding like a word here and a word there. But we were kind of talking about some of the stakeholders. I added kind of other transportation, LTD as a connector to the airport and track places, you know, that get you maybe out of the area a little more. And then Seth had a comment that, you know, I know today we're going to be talking about strategies for reaching each of these groups, but some of them are huge groups, and it'll be, you know, quite a feat to reach them.
Or, yeah, I mean, in addition to some of them being like the university is a huge group with a bunch of different things going on, but some of these are groups with an office you can send a letter to or an email, and others are dispersed communities that are going to be really challenging to reach. So you're gonna have to keep that in mind.
So the strategies will need to be tailored to the specific type of group you're trying to reach, in order to be successful. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. Is that it? You guys part of the same group, or is there one more group? Yeah.
We bounced between all three. Thank you. We bounced between all three and talked a little bit at the beginning about the possibility that clarity of purpose and continuous improvement might have to do with intent of engagement as much as they have to do with content and process. And that clarity of purpose with LTD's work to engage stakeholders seems really to be at the crux of some of it. What type of engagement, what type of involvement, what's the purpose of that involvement, what phase and projects, and then how to continuously improve the plan. And we just discussed that because it is content, but it's also an approach that is really overarching, and we talked about it in a couple of different meetings. That for the purpose of stakeholder involvement and engagement and
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big thing to sort out, right? So if you guys have ideas and thoughts on that, that's a great thing to try to get to over the next couple of meetings.
One more thing, it's a small minor thing, but kind of, there's one group that was called in the 14th, I think the 15th, right?
so
15th night. Yes,
Okay.
under stakeholders, and I just want to make sure that it's called out accurately.
I have to learn about that name later. That's interesting. Okay. Great. Thank you. That's good feedback. I think that was a good check to make sure we're on track for some of this. And please, if you have notes, turn them into us so that we can get those reflected as well. All right. So the next exercise is going to be the root of most of what we're doing today. And I think it's a really important exercise. And the idea here is that we want to really get into strategies for different scenarios. So we put together 3 different scenarios and asked you to develop specific strategies for those. Now, the reason we did that is that it's just much easier to come up with strategies and tactics when you have a specific scenario you're dealing with. We thought it would be too abstract if it just, so we've put that together. So we're going to assign you to breakout groups that are different than the ones you were just in. And we want you to start with the first scenario. So everyone's going to do the same scenario at the same time. Okay. Each of the groups are going to do the same scenarios at the same time. And you're going to say 15 minutes. And you've got post-it notes, sticky notes in front of you. So you can use those sticky notes to write your individual responses and put them on the corresponding section of the poster boards. The poster boards are going to have the specific places that you can just put your ideas and your thoughts for each of these. Okay, so we got one over there, one here.
Yeah, I think there's one more actually.
Okay,
I don't know.
because we're going to have 4 groups, right?
Yeah, there should be 4 groups.
Yeah, see if we can grab one more. So you can put your individual responses as far as strategies and tactics for that scenario onto that, and then spend some time as a group reviewing those responses, sorting them out, talking through them a little bit, and then we're going to do that for 2 and 3, and that will lead us. Yeah, we need one more. That will lead us to a larger group discussion about all the strategies and tactics that we develop at the end. Okay. So, are there any questions about how this is going to proceed so far? Does it seem confusing or clear? Okay. So these are the scenarios we're going to ask you to work through, and then underneath are the questions that we're really going to be talking about. So scenario 1. This is where, okay, LTD has done some internal analysis and we found a place where ridership will increase dramatically if we make specific improvements to a bus corridor, right? So there's an existing corridor and LTD is saying, oh, look, if we do this, this, and this, these changes, that's going to be a major improvement that will capture a lot more riders on that route. So that's a scenario to think about. Okay, well, what does that mean? How would you think about engaging people under that scenario, and you can follow those questions. Scenario 2, setting priorities for the annual budget. LTD has put together an annual budget, not a process that's easy to engage the community on, I can tell you from my personal experience, but it is something that does require some degree of community engagement. So how would you suggest strategies and tactics for that one? Knowing that it's not something that it's hard for people to necessarily get onto, because as we were talking about earlier, there's no specific project necessarily. And then scenario 3, and there's a need that's been identified that people don't feel safe on the system, and there's a perception of a lack of safety on the system. What can we do to engage the community about how to deal with that problem? Because that's a pretty sensitive topic and something that I know a lot of people care about, and it's been brought up several times in this room. So that would be the third scenario. So we're going to start with scenario one, and as soon as we have a fourth easel, you'll be able to start. But you can start writing down your ideas. I'm going to break you into groups. You'll spend the first 15 minutes writing those responses and putting them on the poster board, and then spend 5 minutes trying to discuss and review those within your groups. Yes.
I have a question about scenario one.
Yeah.
Is that a zero-sum game? If you're putting more energy in one route, are you taking it from somewhere else?
So we're not assuming that in this particular case. So we're just assuming these are improvements. It's not that you're worried about how it's going to damage other roads, and it's not necessarily even anything that will have any negative impacts directly on other people in that corridor either. It's just these are potential improvements that we can make. Yes.
So just a clarification of what we put on here, are these strategies we're putting on these cards or the answers to those questions?
So I think.
So the questions are intended to be guiding questions, and the thinking is that as you are answering these questions, you are essentially starting to think about the strategies and tactics that are emerging, because the scenario is the engagement and approach, right? So these are kind of supposed to intend to unearth that. But we also recognize, and that's why we're putting kind of initial strategies and tactics here, that a lot of you guys are, data focused people and would want to have very tangible data to help guide that specific strategy and tactic. This exercise is really intended to start to think about how LTD might approach different scenarios, right? And think about the different stakeholders that might emerge, the different data that's going to be relied upon, and the different challenges and obstacles and how to address those. So you're going to be answering those. So for example, scenario one, LTD has conducted an analysis. So you're going to think about the first question. Okay, what are the desired outcomes of conducting an engagement for that approach? A desired outcome might be, okay, people who are going to be impacted, like we've just talked about, understand what the problem is, right? So that might be something you jot down on your Post-it note. A second thing might be, what data should be relied upon? Well, if we are going to make improvements to a specific bus corridor, maybe we want to know how much it's going to cost, right? So that might be something you jot down. So then as you're going through these questions, you're actually starting to develop those strategies and tactics where you're saying it's important to let people know what the costs are going to be. You're starting to think about the stakeholders, right? And then you're starting to think, okay, well, how are we going to communicate to these stakeholders? So it's just supposed to be brainstorming, and you can put a thought on each Post-it note, and you are supposed to be interacting with your colleagues at the end of those 15 minutes to try to get some clarity of that.
So you can answer any of those questions you want on a Post-it note, because they're all relevant, and but we're trying to get to are the initial strategy tactics. Yes.
Do you want the Post-it notes grouped by question, or do you want us to put the number of what we're answering on the Post-it note?
So we can put a 1 and then a 2 and then a 3 on your big paper, and you can put all your Post-it notes for question 1 and then all your Post-it notes on question 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
We said 3 groups.
Well, so there's a lot of people today, so I think we should do 4 groups.
Okay, so we will do 4 groups. I think we'll hopefully have a result.
Yeah, and these.
Use the blackboard.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
So you want a number of people?
Yeah, I will give you a number, and that'll be your group, and then you can, here comes the other result. We'll give you a number, and then that will be your group, and then you can congregate with that group, okay?
And we're gonna come around and.
Yeah, if you have questions, we'll be there to guide you. So, very simple, right? So your number is 1, and then you're 2, 3, 4, okay? 1. Linda, you're 2. Yep, Daniel, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your 1, yep, 2, 3, 4, and you're an extra 1. Okay.
We need an extra.
You need an extra over there, yeah.
Mine an extra first.
So yeah, why don't we just do like 1 over here, 2 over there, 3 over here, 4 over here.
Good try, yeah.
One's over here, 2 here, 3 there. 4 there. So yeah, 3 is here. 4 is over here. So we're gonna move this easel. Can we move this easel? Hold on, sorry. This is it easier to put the easel there? Sorry.
So we're moving.
Can you guys use that easel? This is 4.
Do we go back?
All right. Yeah, if you guys can use that easel, that'd be great.
Okay.
That's perfect. Thank you. Good number. And there's another one right there. Sorry. So 3 over there, 4 over here. Thank you.
No, they want to.
Yeah. Okay, so the money on the chart, right? Nice sample. The only reason why because we go right there. Five run scenario 1.
Another one.
The sticky part.
I mean,
Make your notes and stick it like something.
okay. These are.
Create.
Going into right. So what we need to do is one people that
It's the ROI.
But like, yeah. Thinking about that corridor. Some of the businesses that maybe have parking.
you guys have a track.
I mean, LTMD doesn't, but that's what's the
Yeah.
We're. That's the thing I see. Yeah, so that is, I mean, I'm sure. And showing the public how not a lot of flexibility people are moving from one corridor.
Yes.
And yeah.
And it's also really tracking.
Maybe that would be an outward question. I'm trying to create one on that series and it's just.
Oh, like real time information.
I also think it's really hard, so I am like the data samples that where she likes
Actually, actually, like, how folders and.
Not like there's 60 about this.
Yeah, I think.
Details and sort of want people to be excited about it.
Yeah, encourage them to write.
Buy-in. I think we're being our.
Yeah, that's good.
Don't be tomorrow. We'll see how this goes. I would assume, do we want to review them before we go on to, or do we just want to? Or maybe another. We just need to. Yes. I feel like. It's not a record there. Okay.
Well, you want, I mean.
It's a corridor through.
Say most of the board.
Yeah.
Those are impacted directly on the forward.
Oh.
Well, I was
I think what I heard from your, like, like, are gonna be a lot of questions. Right. About how the understand all that might be first.
Yeah.
Those that have things like the business supervisor are a lot, right? It is things that would be an distraction, might be that. I think my squirrel or. Personalized solutions where, first of those options. So in the absence. Okay, I mean, that's one of the, the reality is. Well, I think, you could figure it out down. An initial right? So I think what's a trend that comes out is that.
Yeah.
Can't just everyone, like, there's so many things, right? Some are different. So we're just trying and patients say. Discussion around neighborhood schools, that nature, I might have found isn't, right? Well, there's actually saying there's all the. So, in order to say, you know what? Put that on the paper and say. Well, maybe yeah, I mean, I thought, so, I'm glad to hear that you have her cost of the project. Right now. Right now, it's
What I was understanding.
and I don't know what that. Yeah. Yeah. But if it's definitely fine, when that's something.
Yeah. That's just.
Yeah.
So many unknowns.
Right, super. Yeah.
You guys want this to board roll, or you want me
I think that would be, that was about right? And then
Well, no, that would never categorize.
I don't care, like, I'm being like.
What who needs to know something about it.
Yeah.
Who needs to know something about it.
I mean, I think it's an ongoing project because I have to run this. So the whole point of that is just to get at, the fact that people talk really the first one meeting about wanting to their, right?
That's the bottom line.
What are you?
Just identify.
What is the purpose of this room? The questions were, we heard feedback that there have been occasions where it's unclear what else people are ready with the project. And so the engagement strategy.
Maybe heard of that. Man, I don't know how much words to do with your experience, but I know that I'm kind of arguing about it right now.
Yeah, it is. I think there's something guidance.
Number one,
What other
what are the desired
consider
outcomes?
and why do you start?
We haven't.
Yeah, and what's-
I read it to be.
Yeah, if you've got to, you know, avoid the what ifs.
So we're hoping folks can get to the 5-minute mark where you're sharing out and clarifying and consolidating.
Yeah, how do you, like, if you have a plan, you need to tell what desired after that, what is that, like, what?
I think so.
Start
Fill out
talking.
our stick on the
So look, we got a great plan.
And my son's.
Yeah, we're like, desired outcome, we're like, this is how it would be, how it would be, this is how this. And also, that is, but, that's how I. It seems like this all has to be taken from a framework of like, I don't know, minimal lack of better word, but elimination equals for like, two members. It's the top, it's just the top area. Well, that was.
I think I'll try to for the next one, I think we should have them exactly what we hired to receive because it's 6:26 and we need to get them to work. And then we're gonna get smaller, right?
6:30. So you
Start at 6. I said that they were.
We have to discuss the
Okay, so let's say that. But that. Share.
already discussed.
It's very hard.
Okay.
So maybe we just need. Yeah, and then. Let's look at more deep scenario and then let's just really can share out. So like, let's do that time. Yeah, because they're not gonna do 5 minutes of discussing.
They're already.
I understand, but they're doing a lot of discussion as they do.
That gives us 5 minutes.
But by that's 20-minute period.
Oh, all right.
We don't care about that.
Okay, so then you. 6:30 edition of the series. We're gonna do that till 6.
All right, this is your chance to discuss amongst yourselves. We're gonna move to the next scenario pretty soon, so. Anything you want to sort out or just, discuss amongst yourselves, we're gonna move quickly to the next scenario.
You're still gonna start at 6:35 or we're gonna start?
Yeah. So it's 6:30. Group 1, you got a poster posted because we're moving on. Hey, group 1, you got a poster posted.
So, they're gonna have to know where that she's on. Should I do that already?
Right, and they're like, well, it's getting, yeah, that's fun.
Just a question, when we do the regular share out, I just want to.
Yeah.
So just go around. Okay, time to move to scenario 2. I know you want to keep talking about this first one because it's awesome. But we got to move on to scenario 2 so we get a sense of what you're thinking about that. So scenario 2 is the annual budget. We're going to come around and rip off your sheets to help you move on.
Right,
Yeah. Like, we talked about it, like, suddenly you're. Hey, we're gonna be doing our budget and. How should we set our priorities?
So we're doing which?
Scenario 2.
Oh, I love them.
Either we have less money. That's where she, just talking about like, hey, do you care more about ridership or coverage?
Is it on are those the only factors? Yeah. You want to have more solar power.
So this would probably be one where they have some of the largest. They got taxed for like the largest.
The lightest. Well, it is in principle.
So they decide after the as many people know about as many voices to the party. Restaurant, many stakeholders. Yeah.
And I think this is where I'm going to talk about. Maybe go and cut down your.
Yeah.
Big long strategy. Jumping around as people are speaking.
No, that's good. But I think it's I feel like for number three, like the budget.
You know what, I have to say.
Not everyone.
Yeah,
Is that I feel like it's like a lot of the area. Fair with this. Transparency.
Well, that's the desire. Maybe that should be.
Is this for 2020? Oh, okay, yeah.
We're five people, so we're five people. It's like.
That makes sense. That's a good way to shoot.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As the staff. Yeah, just weird.
But.
Isn't the funders on one, like?
Sure, that's my
There's 10 minutes left on scenario 2.
Basic operational stuff. You know, they have to say like, I don't think that it's not. Because they heard. This is your priority. Yeah, that's how we. Here's what our, and that doesn't get used for, right? The rest of the time. Yes. Not your long one, but like. Yeah, it's limited. Age down.
Even
Arsenal. I see that. So, right, it's important. That's not for analysis, I think.
That's right.
That's what's been there.
Right.
And Oklahoma and Boston. Everyone who consider this.
Oh, no, right.
Oh, it is the same. Exactly, I have.
Should be, right?
Depends whether we're running the needle confinement time, and so many different tests of that.
I mean, that's also feel like media world was difficult, but I feel like this subject is one of the subjects where.
Right. So when they're like, then like our limited integration, care about how we can affect it's my own. And so. That's that. It goes to the science of your.
It doesn't matter how much you get a particular thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you still have to try. But, to point number 4.
Look at how well. Others. No, no. I wanted to find about it.
No, they.
Yeah.
They started at 6:30.
Hey, they said we can. Oh, yeah. That makes sense too. Pretty well served by those. Everybody pretty much stops. But it's still, and you could be.
There's no tape, when I take them off, so if you start riding up, no problem, okay, okay.
When it's long.
Real drive.
They're probably tired.
And the first rider, riders. Okay, this is like a one.
Yeah.
So Sarah was one, group one said for desired outcomes, that there's some smart desired improvements are funded. That's their support. Data, they want financial impact, property or property value, they can see other benefits.
Other metrics on that.
Why do this? Others consider how to solution chosen that possible solution that they have and residents, employers, all
Well,
missing stakeholders.
yeah, I mean, I think that's something that gotta talk about.
That's good.
95% of it is.
Eventually, you're able to get on that. That was a good one.
Basically getting it onto the poster. Onto the poster.
Yeah.
We've got a few minutes left, so go ahead and get those ideas onto your easel. Get them up there because we're going to move on in a few minutes to the final scenario.
Are you here?
A year over year.
Probably were there.
I think it's.
Sitting right more.
Your from people. Or county that's. Series. You know, it used to be there was a lot of the. Pretty much out. Figuring out what is it, what office is it? I feel like that's not gonna be fair enough.
You can come now.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. Thanks.
The service.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
But.
It's still there. Memory. Well.
I think you kind of lost that. That's not a mayoral staple. No, I think it's just like, and then that is, I mean, to go to the group. I'm not.
Yeah, I do like how that.
Or when you think about it, I mean, they say.
Okay, time to wrap up scenario 2, move on to the final scenario, scenario 3. We're gonna come around and remove your easels. And we're gonna move on to scenario 3.
Oh.
You know, right? I feel like let's do it like more day offer.
So, I agree, like, very well, I want to. For perception of safety. Most of it is perception.
Yeah.
Right.
But actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Mystery shots. Yes, exactly.
Mystery shopper, you know how like.
Well, that's actually the thing, the security
Yeah.
No, you're fine. It's not a bad. Let them hear it.
Yeah.
Then lighters, right, like a partial and memory lighter. Lighters,
It's perception, so safety. Safety.
Yeah, we can say reality.
Safety and perception, safety and interaction, right? Because we find in a restaurant, unless they feel safe getting there, feel safe waiting for those, there's nothing to go. It's like a destination. Right?
That's right, wrote down that on the board.
So I
We're trying to do the contract.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you down.
Yeah.
Crime reports and the rest.
I don't know, I thought that might be going. Also. What's the big thing? Because you could have really good. Getting.
7 o'clock. we'll start to
So you're gonna have.
Say like 10 minutes. Yeah. Learn a lot.
Oh, no, I used to go there a lot.
I mean, you know, you're a lot less.
Well, we have, we're collecting on these. But you're taking photos of everything and putting it into a bag. Now, it's.
One thing that happened tomorrow. All the info.
No, you're right.
Oh.
Honestly.
They have.
Why I sent an email to the confirm that there will be like. As I said, the client.
Because I think
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, maybe like.
Yeah.
Seems like people really need to understand.
It's almost straightforward. This is a 5 question.
Yeah.
I remember we had to talk about narrow the question. You couldn't really get it.
Yeah.
I forgot.
We have 9 more minutes on this scenario. So BDC is and SDR have presence, so they're having a lot of their journalists do like somebody else. So or heard this makes it and all of it. I'm serious, I was not ready for this, like I spent years just knowing his voice. And I'm unexpectedly now and that have been big life. I've never seen his face.
I've seen that.
His voice is his voice like brings his cover. And now I see his face. That's not a face I know. But I think his voice is but it's speaks.
I like when we.
What?
Like the workforce.
There. I think our class, you can make fun of.
They make fun of
I
that,
think,
but everybody else.
who's that? That's and it's like speaks French. Invisible.
Yeah.
Why? It's like a southern, it's like a American southern accent. It's so bizarre.
I know, I understand the name, I wonder if it's. I'm like, who's the Bernstein of Ohio, that's not.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah.
is it Guy Russell or Kai Russell?
Yeah.
It goes, this isn't so fast. What's the first one? Is it one? Kai Russell? Oh, yes, so also A Martinez. A letter Martinez? No.
First time working on this, I didn't know the thing, but like, hey.
True. What's that? It really throws me off.
I'm sure.
A Martinez.
I know this was the problem, he was supposed to hold his friend, but
Oh, I would be interested in getting his perspective. I was looking this on the site. I was trying to determine like how do journalists decide what photos they show in level.
Yeah.
How do they decide?
And so.
Yeah, I think.
Because that's right. I was like, looking at it, it's like, it's like a lot of research, and there's a lot of research that they've done. But they've also done research of like how a entire production, like what types of images they use. And there's also like some facility searching for that, but they also like research on major publications like the extent of graphic level of graphic images that have been strategic. So I was trying to how do you
it has to be seen. They can't have experience. That demonstrates some order.
But then there have been historically like times where images have really influenced.
So with that, maybe the
opinion. Right. Or
that was a very. You can make an argument for like, if they don't see that, then you see.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but,
As opposed to like.
but I'm saying that they're. Wait, but there's one other side that show like.
Because maybe it's not showing the worst things, they're showing. Got less than 5 minutes, the final scenario here.
All confusers, is it a link or is it? Is it a beat? Hurt? The best one. Is it a hurt or is it a bed? Is it a turn or is it a test? Is it a feed or is it a fish?
Yeah, we used to have the. Yeah, but we're.
Like, we should, that's what's happening.
It was about.
Giving service all day long. And I don't know his name. Okay. So that's. No, I'm glad.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
There's one thing.
This is another.
Is it a feed? What is it? Is it feeding or is it being fed? Is it a bus line that is a feeder of other bus lines? Or is it a bus line that is a trunk? Feeder line or trunk?
Actually, 4 hours. Right? I mean, that's thinking like how.
Yeah, they don't. Right. As opposed to being given. All right, we're gonna wrap it up. People wanna take their seats. We're gonna start some discussion. You wanna?
We'll make sure to get everything on there and then we'll screw You want to start?
Yeah, no, go, just sit where you are because we're gonna be talking about the specific groups. Group one needs to put their sticky notes up.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna try to use the time we have left to talk a little bit as a larger group about what we found. You want to just take your seats wherever you're. Don't go back to your original seat. Just stay where you are because you can. We're gonna be talking about your group. Yeah. All right, we're gonna go through each scenario, and for each scenario, we're gonna have someone from the group report out on some of the summary answers to each of these questions. So we're gonna start. We're gonna start with scenario one. So under scenario one, the question was, that LTD's got this analysis that shows the potential for higher ridership, based on specific improvements to a bus corridor. So group one, please tell us a little bit about how you answered, some of these questions with respect to scenario one. Who wants to volunteer from group one?
Sure.
Give us a little rundown. Thank you.
Some of the people in my group pointed out, after we've been sort of cogitating on this a little bit, that this premise is a failure in public involvement. Because we shouldn't be at that point before we've had some serious involvement. So, desired outcomes, so, overall, we feel like, in general, we should be doing the involvement before they make a decision. And this is, I know, I work for the public in another context where I sometimes have to do public involvement, and, we're all going through these things where, the standard thing is someone convinces you that something is okay, then you go to the public with it. And really, we want to be going to the public sooner and getting people along sooner and figuring out what the problem is and what we might do about it. So anyway, so putting that aside.
Well, no, but I think that's a really important point, because what you're saying is that the time that LTD gets to, hey, we should make specific improvements to this corridor, it should be because they've engaged the public and found that that's something the public wants, not just that they had an internal meeting. Right. I think that's a really great point. Thank you.
So we talked a little bit about, desired outcomes. I guess if you're in this situation, try to get buy-in, try to get good PR because it's an improvement. We would want the data that was used to come up with this analysis, that is an improvement. So how do you know it's an improvement? What else did you consider? If you spent the same money on a different corridor, would you get more or less improvement? Stakeholders to be engaged, people who ride that route, people who might ride that route, people who might be impacted if there are externalities to that improvement. It was written a little vaguely, so, but if you need more shoulder for your stops, where's that going to come from? Obstacles, I don't remember what we said about obstacles.
It's the one behind you.
No,
That's
that's three. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I think one of the big obstacles is that we didn't do the public engagement soon enough.
I think someone wrote missing stakeholders could jeopardize support and consensus.
Right. We don't have the stakeholders soon enough. And then let's see, what did we write?
Anything on strategies and tactics?
Yeah. The way the question is written, it seems like it's more of a sales thing than a true public engagement thing, which, there's probably a place for that. But ideally, we'd be doing better public engagement farther upstream.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Scenario one, group two. What do you guys have to say about scenario one?
Go ahead.
Right,
Have kind of like a broad kind of consensus about everything. It's gonna be a little
feeling kind of our thoughts together, mishmashing. The different groups that we were kind of talking about, obviously the current riders of that route. We also talked about getting support from the area impacts the residents and businesses there, not just to inform them, but also hopefully to activate them, to
in favor of these improvements. I specifically,
Sorry, moving in real time.
No, that's okay. No, take a good time.
You know, how to be transparent on timeline, cost and construction.
This one says ensure ridership increases impacts, for multiple marginalized stakeholders. One of the challenges that I identified was that, identifying the would-be riders, is a great idea. It might be hard to figure out who will be these riders. But if you can identify them, that might, conform the improvement. Taylor's experiencing for these riders. All kinds of different groups to be engaged, different labels, large jobs and different corridors for employers and employees.
Obstacles, any obstacles?
We did talk about sort of the push-pull of public forums, when kind of to host those, you want to, not host a public forum when the thing is already baked, we want public input, or at least, yeah, if the public is coming out and, giving feedback on the project, you want to be able to incorporate their feedback in the project, but it's hard to go out, too soon. So we did kind of put that as a challenge, at what point to engage the public, in such a, public forum. So Zoom. That's on that note.
Any strategies and tactics or? Okay.
Push marketing to audience, offer awards for writing, prepare questions.
My writing, sorry.
That's okay. We'll be interpreting all these best we can through our notes here. Emma's doing a great job of getting them all down. Okay, thank you. Group 3, what do you got for scenario 1?
Scenario 1. So for some of the desired outcomes, we had obviously increased ridership. I wrote down an economic and life improvement for that route. So first of all, when the home values go up, business income goes up, walking and exercise numbers need to go up, but having a better bus route, safer one maybe. Community first improvement is something that I believe Amber came up with, to making sure that the improvements are exactly what the community wants and not just what was decided in a room. Aside from ridership, there was a question about what are the other benefits to communicate, to reduce.
This was mine, like,
Yeah.
so there's one benefit, but are there other benefits? Are we reducing the maintenance? Are we, getting a win-win across the board? And how can we communicate that?
So some of the data that we'd like to see is the cost, realistic upgrades, the timeline, competing priorities versus upgrades, or competing priorities of upgrades. Data that we'd like to see is the real impact to businesses or communities. Then proof of analytic accuracy.
That was mine.
Okay.
When you would like one of the outcomes to be that your analysis was correct.
Some of the stakeholders are community organizations, small businesses located in the route. Stakeholders are communities that share the route, maybe corridors. And then adjacent residential and business services. I put down low income families, so maybe that improving life for those. Some of the obstacles, time engagement on topic, pushback on construction and cost. Access to shared information and how to reach them and all the various stakeholders. And then a challenge flat out would be on maybe we just doesn't know. And some of the strategies that we came up with were forming a broad stakeholder committee, an open house in that corridor. And then I came up with conducting a survey which includes all the stakeholders, reviewing, and then making sure that we receive a majority support. Then we came up with incentivizing participation in internal stakeholder recruitment as well. And that's it. Great.
Yeah, I'm hearing a general theme for this particular scenario, which is that this scenario can't or should not occur without actually finding out what the community wants before you go out there. That seems to be pretty consistent, of course, the first three groups. But we don't know if the community wants to increase ridership in this corridor. So how do we, that determines everything from there. So that's a really important lesson. Group 4.
For our desired outcome, we kind of had a disagreement about what the actual desired outcome would be. Were we thinking a ridership increase, or was it maybe an increase in revenue brought in? But overall, we wanted to see diverse people engaged. Is this what people actually want? Is it going to actually be a benefit? Is increased ridership a priority, or is it something that we want to people? That's the desired outcome. The stuff. Data that we wanted was, is there maybe a net positive ROI? Is it, I remember someone saying the cost of a bus will never be paid off for by the time maintenance and everything else is accounted for. Off the projects and taxpayers, and they taxpayers want to know where is their money going? Is their money, like what is the breakdown of as well as tell people the pros and cons of the project, what it is the positives and the negatives. And then make sure people, the riders understand what the plan is and improvement. What is improvement? Is it something large or small? Those are the stats that we discussed. Some stakeholders were people on the route, so they're living on the route that may use it. Businesses, if you're an employee of some business, as well as explain what construction will take place. Construction, noisy, loud, then stakeholder taxpayers will be taking such because their money is probably from what's funding the project. So potential obstacles, like I said, cost versus revenue, the cost of the stakeholders, is it worth it? Are stakeholders on board with it? Do they want it? Because sometimes, it's sure it may be increased ridership, but is that what stakeholders actually want? Are the stats correct? How do they get this drafted increase? Where, because normally whenever someone takes the survey, normally you have a exaggerated opinion, positive or negative. How do we know that there's going to be drastic increase? And then some initial strategies or tactics. So we discussed word neighborhood groups. I know that Michelle is a part of the River Road neighborhood. Okay. And as well as being consistent, we mentioned that in our last meeting, that maybe even with like a monthly newsletter, something that people can expect is something that really builds on a way to get stuff out and people can know about it in a more orderly fashion. as well as businesses, impacted should be engaged, because most businesses are, like key stakeholders in these projects.
You mean businesses in the corridor or businesses?
And along the route. Like Michelle and through that, business are basically business, right? They close at 5 and then may not be included in their neighborhood group, and not be able to voice their opinions about that.
Thank you. All right, this is great. I'm hearing a lot of support for the idea of co-creation with the community about these things rather than the classic decide, announce, defend approach that we often see. So that makes a lot of sense. We're really low on time, and so what I'd like you to do as we go through the next two scenarios is give me your you can appoint someone who you think is the best at summarizing, but a very brief version of what the general overview of what you found, particularly on strategies and tactics, was the most useful. So if there's someone from group 1 who can do that for scenario 2, a really short version, who feels good about that?
We can tackle that one real fast.
All right, that's great.
Fast on group 2. We thought that this could be, from a tactic standpoint, a good place to test new tactic innovations. So the stakeholders on this is probably the much broader community, and using all the tools could be a good method here. So it's a good place to try out a new one, and you're doing it frequently so you can look back at effectiveness. We also noted that from an obstacle standpoint, this is going to be a place where it's important to set expectations about what you're asking stakeholders to. Don't ask them to engage on things that they can't influence, especially as it pertains to budget drafting on the other side of it. It's okay, just don't ask them. Those are some high points, and there's other really good ones. But
That's great. I love that second one because I always hate it when I'm invited to a meeting where no one really wants my opinion. All right, group 2.
So it was broad groups of populations that would be a part of it, but we did bring up to the challenge of people coming in and say their opinions that can make that impact on the budget process, in the gaps in knowledge on what LPP is funded by, not so much like individual household tax dollars like that. And then budget 101 forum, and then focusing on qualitative data or testimonies from individuals before you start building significant changes.
Could you say the last point again? Sorry, you said the budget 1 forum.
Get testimony and qualitative data early. Right? Is that what I said?
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Group 3.
Yeah, very echoing a lot from what group 1 said, some additional strategies, and tactics, educate on the budgeting process, to establish how the community can do it. Clear timeline and opportunities to engage for a diverse reach. Routine, potentially do something like this annual so that you can set expectations, you know, feed itself, so that the community can build on itself in terms of knowledge and awareness. And again, develop a committee to provide education services to stakeholders. So a lot about educating.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process that is hard for a lot of people to grasp. I've worked at transit agencies and don't grasp it. So, yeah, move forward.
Yeah, we've kind of also been said a lot of things that have already been said. Stakeholders and education, teaching them about budgets and how those work and what are the considerations for a deep budget. Yeah, that's kind of one of the main things we said, as well as for just get as wide as audience as possible, and the realistic plans that meets the strategies of LT.
Say that again.
A realistic plan that meets the strategic goals of LT.
Excellent. All right. Let's do the last in the 10 minutes we have ish remaining. Let's do the last scenario. So who from group one can do scenario 3 on improving safety and perception of safety?
I can try to, but Seth, tell me if there's anything else up there that we should add. So in the way that this was framed, one of the things we talked about was the importance for LTD to basically assess, validate, investigate whatever information has come forward about a safety issue or a perception of a safety issue in the system, so that when a problem is identified, that the public knows the problem's been identified, LTD takes this seriously, and now they're going to explain to us how they are addressing this situation. That was in a more sort of abstract, like scenario 3, LTD has identified a problem. How should they communicate that to them? Specific to this scenario, we also talked a lot about perceptions of safety and improving safety, and that also emphasizes a kind of nuanced circumstance where LTD is engaging with a broader perception of community safety and as a stakeholder within that, and also a container of activities within that larger system. And I don't know if we talked that much about data other than the vetting and the investigation kind of components, but in terms of stakeholders, depending on the scale of whatever issue is present, that it feels a lot like crisis communications, and sort of who you're talking with, depending on just how pervasive or extreme the circumstances. We talked some about TriMet and circumstances that agency has dealt with, and then we also talked about perceptions of safety and perceptions of subjective experience. So that whole range between people losing their lives within the reach of a transit experience, and discrimination and perceptions of safety, but also the blurriness of community safety issues.
Okay. Group 2, what do you got?
There were lots of groups that we kind of, talked about kind of engaging with. Obviously, just generally riders, but also drivers to definitely gain their perception of safety issues. I also put a couple of folks that would be more maybe on the perception side of things and stay away, parents of young school children, women identifying people, LGBT community, racial ethnic minority groups. We talked about parsing out the difference, as Group 1 said, between real safety issues and perception issues. That might look like reviewing, like a full review of complaints, incident reports, accident reports, arrests, what that all looks like. And someone wrote two-way dialogue using kind of there's definitely some risks with this. The risk of stereotyping or program, which one already mentioned. Also, just a reputation of safety issues, real or perceived, is really hard to shape, and so that's something that community can self-prophecy unless people writing. There were some ideas though about some creative things here. So one sort of ideas of mystery shoppers on buses, just to kind of be evaluating how bus drivers or staff are handling kind of issues, as well as just being kind of eyes on the scene. We talked about plain clothes, more of kind of an ambassador position.
Nice people.
Yes, nice people. Good Samaritan plants, who are maybe more hands-on than just kind of being a presence, but also, helping people with bags and things like that. Something about artists engaged window art, which would just like increase just the general feeling of goodwill on the bus. Yeah, and then also a specialized potential for an event, inviting those who might perceive safety issues, like the parents of young children, to get acquainted with riding the bus. Something
Thank you. Ambassadors are something that a lot of transit agencies are currently exploring as an opportunity. And then I love how you can't resist getting into solutions to the problem. That's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's helpful, as well. Group 3.
I'll go ahead and start off with the stakeholder. So, employers and employees, LTD leadership, police, local organizations like groups. I think a really important stakeholder are LTD drivers themselves. So, the main point of contact between LTD and the customer on the bus. So with that, I think a really important data that we should look at is the driver safety number. So how safe do the drivers themselves feel? But then that creates a different data type to the beginning of the state. Number of safety incidents, incidents and comparison / historical analysis. In order to overall improve safety, I think it would be a good way of tracking that would be the amount of weekly average users that a specific corridor might have. So seeing an increase in that might be a clue that safety is going up. Let's see.
Any good strategies and tactics you guys come up with?
Yeah, so good strategies and tactics would be increasing obviously the presence of safety personnel or ambassadors, and then releasing a safety bulletin. So if there is a known issue, that would be more aware. And then incentivizing safety for employees. So we're talking about how other businesses have like a really robust safety system. So implementing something like that with us could be a good idea.
Great. Okay. Group 4.
Just 30 seconds.
You can do it.
Ditto. Data. I mean, it was all data driven. And the only thing that really we thought of, I think that nobody mentioned, but you may have on yours, is about engaging law enforcement in the process early. If they're supportive of any tactics, of any communication, it will make any outcomes more successful.
All right. Wow. Okay. So we got a lot of information tonight, which is great. That means you guys worked really hard and I appreciate it. Thank you so much for putting in all this time and effort. We're going to report back on this next meeting, which is November 29th, right after Thanksgiving. I hope everyone has a great, wonderful Thanksgiving. And I'm sure you'll be thinking about LTD and all the engagement challenges with your families and discussing it around the table. It's probably a more safer topic to discuss than many other things. Anything you want to say about health? So, and Daniel or Amber, anything you want to say to close this out?
No. Thank you all for being here. And I know at the beginning is maybe a little bit confusing, but we're getting there. We're making really solid progress. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.